Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about vector and array in C++. At the end of the video there will be a summary that shows the differences between them. Let's start with the vector. The vector in C++ is similar to the array in C. However, the vector is dynamic in size, which means you can add or delete elements from the vector, and based on that, the size will increase or shrink. The vector stores elements contiguously in the memory, and this means that random access to any element in the vector takes constant time. Insertion or removal an element from the end of the vector also take constant time. However, insertion or removal of elements take linear time, which is the distance from the elements to be added or deleted to the end of the vector. For example, let's say I want to delete number 2. So all the elements 3, 4, and 8 will be shifted back, and this will take linear time. This is why the time complexity of insertion or removal of elements not at the end takes big O of n. How can I access element in a vector? There are several methods used to access elements in the vector. The first method is front. Calling this method would return a reference to the first element in the container or the vector. For example, here I define a vector of 3 elements, and calling the vector or a.front will return the first element of the vector, which is 1, as you see in the output. The second method is back, which returns a reference to the last element in the vector. An example, we have vector of 3 elements, calling, which is named a, and calling a.back will return the last element in the vector, which is 3. I also can access any element in the vector using the method at. The method at takes the position of the element I want to access, and this method do check if that index is not within the range of the container. So if the position is not in the range of the container, it will throw an exception out of range. Example, this is the vector A that contains 3 elements. In this case, I want to print or access the element at position is 2. This is position 0, this is position 1, and this is position 3. So it will return 3. Here I want to access an element at position 3, but position 3 does not exist, so an error of type out of range will be thrown. I can access the element in the vector, use this operator, open and close brackets. The difference between this operator and at is that this operator does not check if the index is in the vector boundary. And if I try to access an element which does not exist, which is not in the range of the vector, the behavior is undefined. Example, I want to access element at position 2, which is in this case is 3. 3 is printed. And if I try to access position 3 using this operator, the behavior is undefined, and in this case it returns 0. There are also several methods used to check the capacity of the vector. The first method is empty. It checks if the vector has no elements. It returns true if the container is empty and false otherwise. The other method is size, which returns the number of elements in the vector. Example, this is the vector that has 3 elements, and I check if this vector is empty, print the vector is empty, otherwise the vector is not empty. And because the vector is not empty, it will print the vector is not empty. And here, calling a.size will return how many elements in the vector, which is 3 elements. This is why here 3 elements is printed. How can I modify values in the vector? There are many modifiers. The first method, called clear. Calling this method will erase all elements from the container. After this call, the size of the vector will be 0. Pushback. Pushback used to add elements at the end of the vector. The new element is initialized as a copy of value. mPlaceBack is also used to add a new element to the end of the vector. The difference between pushback and mPlaceBack is that pushback, when it takes the object or value, it will do a copy into the vector, while mPlaceBack, it will construct in place object so that it avoids any copy or move operation required when using pushback. So if there are two options to use pushback or mPlaceBack, I would recommend to use mPlaceBack because it's more efficient. Popback used to remove the last element from the container. Insert. This method used to insert elements at specified location in the container. Erase. It erases the specified elements from the vector. Example. First of all, I define this function which take a vector as a reference and print all the elements inside the vector. In the main function, I defined a vector. This is another way to initialize a vector. So here I say book or reserve a vector of 10 elements and assign 2 to each element in the vector, so that here we have 10 elements and each of them with the value 2. Pushback elements 3. in place back element 4. So 2, 3 and 4 are pushed to the end of the vector. Now if I want to insert 7 to position 2, I do iteration a.begin. This is like an iterator to the begin of the vector, and plus 2, it tells that insert 7 to position 2. This is why here you see 7. So a new element added at this position. Erase. I can erase the element at position 2. The same, a.begin should return a pointer or an iterator to the first element, plus 2 will do shift to the position 2, and erase, calling erase will remove the element which is number 7, and here you see the element is removed. Clear, calling a.clear will remove all the elements from the vector, and here you see that the vector is empty. This is a way to implement a 2D vector. So here you see vector of vector, and this vector has 3 rows, 5 columns, and assign the value 1 to each position. So we have 3 rows, 5 columns with all values equal to 1. Now let's talk about stdarray. stdarray in C++ is a container that encapsulates fixed size array. The struct combines the performance and accessibility of a C-style array with the benefits of a standard container, such as knowing its own size. Here are some methods used to access elements in the stdarray. Those methods similar to what we saw in vector. So here I defined array. I should include this library called array, and because the array has to, because I have to know the size of the array at the compile time, so I defined this array with 6 elements. And here how can I initialize the array? So now I declared an array with 6 elements. Edit front will return a reference to the first element. This is why here it prints 1. Edit back will return the last element, which is 6. The element at position 2, this is 0, 1, 2, is 3, this is 3, and the element at position 3 is equal 4, and here it's printed 4. There are also methods to know the capacity of the array, similar to what we saw for the vector, which are empty and size. Empty checks if the array is not empty, or check if the array is empty, and size return how many elements in the array. There are also other useful operations which are, and might be these operations exist in the vector also. Fill it will fill the array with the elements I give to this method, and the swap, it will swap the elements between two arrays. Example, here I declare an array of type integer with 3 items, and I use the method fill to fill the array with the value 1, and you see here I printed the values and all the values equal to 1. Edit size, the array has 3 elements, so it will print 3. And here I defined another array with 3 elements, each element in the array equal to 2. And calling a.swap_p, it means switch all the items between A and B. So if I print the array A, now it has the value 2, and if I print the array P, it has the values 1. It means that all the items switch between the two arrays. Let's talk about the differences between vector and array. First of all, vector is dynamic in size, grows and shrink automatically if elements are added or removed, while array has static size. Its size has to be known at the compile time. Vector has several useful methods that let you perform operations that on normal array would be hard, like inserting elements in the middle of the vector, which is not easy to do in the array. Array is more efficient, so stdarray is more efficient. This is because it's like a wrapper around a C-style array. It can be stored in the stack compared to vector, which is stored in the heap. So the stdarray can be stored in the stack if the object that holds this array is stored in the stack. It means that this array will be stored in the stack also, while the vector is always stored in the heap, which means the stack accessing the array is faster. So in general, if you have a small fixed size and you know this size, like let's say you have 500 elements, and then I recommend to use array instead of vector. Thank you for watching.